What is up, gamers? It's been a long time since I made a video, and I do apologize for that, but I'll explain more at the end of the video if you'd like to know more. Moving on to the topic of this video, the 2022 Valorant Champions Tour is in full swing, and the first International LAN Masters event in Reykjavik, Iceland starts tomorrow. Today, I will be giving you guys all the information on all the teams, about their players, their play styles, and all of them that have made the event. And later in the video, I'm going to be giving my opinion on the power rankings of every team and my predictions. All the timestamps will be in the description below if you want to skip the breakdown of every team and go straight to the power rankings or predictions, or go to your favorite team. Whatever you guys would like. Teams all across the world competed in a slot for this event, and only 12 made it. Those 12 teams being the Guard and OpTic from North America, G2, Fnatic, and Liquid from EMEA, PaperX and Xerxia from APEC, DRX Vision Strikers from Korea, Zeta Division from Japan, Crew from Latin America, and Loud and Ninjas in Pajamas from Brazil. I will be going down through the groups of this event and explain each of their play styles and players to watch for each team. The explanations for each team will be fact-based, and the power rankings and predictions will be more my opinions, but also fact-based at the same time. I've watched many hours and hours and hours of VODs and live games of every single one of these teams, and this is my analysis of all of them. Before we get started, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share the video because it really helps me out. I put a ton of hours into this video, and it really helps me so I'm able to make more videos just like this one. Without further ado, I'll start with NIP from Brazil. NIP is a second seed coming out of the Brazilian region after being Leviathan in the LATAM Brazil playoff 3-0. They went 3-1 in their group for the main event in Brazil, only losing to Furia in the first week, which they then beat in the first game of their playoffs. In the playoffs, they lost to the first seed Loud twice, but beat everybody else, and relatively convincingly. Some of their games have looked a little bit shaky, but overall, they're still one of the better Brazilian teams. Their team consists of the star duelist Zand from Furia, boasting a 248 average combat score, or ACS. The other players on the team are the Sentinel BEZN1 and the Sova Kaukazin, both coming from pretty much nowhere. The other duelist John from Gamelanders Blue, and finally the controller BNJ from Crew. NIP was originally a European-based org, but then they moved to Brazil and picked up all these players. BNJ is the only non-Brazilian player on the team, as he's from Argentina. However, he slots in quite nicely from last year's champions, semi-finalists of Crew. Onto the playstyle of NIP. Just like the rest of the region, they play a relatively aggressive playstyle, especially on attack. Most of the plants they manage to get happen in the first 40 seconds to a minute. If a team holds them off to later than this, though, the other team has a much higher chance of winning the round. For a lot of maps, they do run a double duelist comp, which allows them to play really aggressively and shut down a lot of teams with that aggression. But on defense, they don't play as aggressive, but they still can play relatively aggressive at the times. They like to set up a lot of flanks and rotate really quickly as they like to play retake. They do run into a lot of problems with teams that like to default often, and they can over-rotate and allow the other team to get set up on site for a favorable post plant for them. I think NIP is a solid team in the Brazilian scene, but I really doubt that they'll make it past groups at all, if they even are able to win any games. One saving grace is that they're in a relatively easy group, and I still think that they should beat Zeta Division, but I don't think that they'll be able to beat Fnatic, even with a sub of Firath, or DRX Vision Strikers, and we'll get to all those teams in just a little bit. But if they were even to win any games or make playoffs at all, Zand would have to come up huge for them, and even then, I'm not sure if that will be enough to get some wins regardless. Moving on to the next team in the event, which is Fnatic from EMEA. Fnatic were quarterfinalists in Champions last year and finished first in their group in the Challengers League, going 5-0, not losing to a single team. However, in the playoffs, they fell off a little bit with losses to FunPlus Phoenix and G2. Even though those were just the seeding matches, the cracks started to show for Fnatic. It's also a shame that Brave AF is now under investigation by Fnatic for the allegations of supporting the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Until that's resolved, he is inactive and cannot play on the team. So Fnatic has brought in Firath as a sub from Alliance, who is a Sova main just like Brave, and some people are saying that he'll be able to slot in quite nicely since he plays very similar to Brave. But will he be able to fill in the shoes of Brave, who's performed really well with Fnatic and performed under lots of pressure and everything like that? Will Firath be able to perform the same way with lots of pressures on his shoulder and little practice with Fnatic? That remains to be seen. The star duelist Durker was almost unable to attend the Masters event due to complications with COVID-19. However, he now has a negative antigen test and will be able to fly out to Reykjavik, saving his team. Durker is the star duelist of the team and has been performing incredibly well with an average combat score of 267. Now that Durker is confirmed to be able to go to Reykjavik, the team looks to be in a lot better shape. The other 3 members of the squad are the IGL Boaster, the Controller Mystic, and the Sentinel Magnum. This squad was so potent in Challengers and looked to be a really strong and great pick to win this event. Their playstyle is a slower, more defaulty style relying on a lot of utility usage. They don't rotate easily and they clinically dismantle their opponents with set plays as well as solid individual performances, especially for Durker. Durker is absolutely insane. This guy will literally destroy people and you have no idea how he does it. His aim is just incredible. But Fnatic are in luck that their group is a relatively easy one. So even though they lost Brave AF and are having a sub in Fearoth, now that Durker's back, I think they're in luck and still one of the favorites to win the event yet again. Even though EMEA as a region looks to be in shambles, as this sub Fearoth for Fnatic is a definite nerf to their team. And the top placing team will not be in attendance, Fun plus Phoenix, because of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict and travel restrictions. As Fun plus Phoenix has 2 Russian and 1 Ukrainian team members, which would not allow them to field a full roster, and Riot said that they could not participate. This allowed Liquid to go in their place. However, this is a shame because FPX looked absolutely outstanding, and if they're performing in this Masters, I would have picked them to win 100%. And if not win, then definitely place well. Instead, they got 200 VCT points and $25,000. But I would have loved to see them at Masters. I'm sure, though, that we'll be able to see them later this year on the international stage, as they look so good right now. Going back to Fnatic, I think if Durker's firing on all cylinders and playing really well, they still do have a chance of winning this event or even placing well. But I wouldn't bet on them until we see how they do with the sub of Fearoth. Moving on to the third team of this event, DRX Vision Strikers out of Korea. They have dominated the Korean region for so long and even overcame the rising challengers of Onslayers that defeated them in the group stage with a former member of their team, King, by beating them twice in playoffs and making it to Masters Reykjavik. DRX is led by the duelist RB with an ACS of 240. The rest of their team is the Initiator Stacks, the Sentinel Buzz, the Sova Zest, and the Controller Mako. DRX had a disappointing run at Champions in Berlin last year, not even making it out of the group stage after losses to both Fnatic and Cloud9. But they are ready to come back with a vengeance, and they are in top form. Their playstyle hasn't changed very much since last year, as they continue to use incredibly intricate set plays to execute onto a site all at one time. They're very good at dismantling their enemies piece by piece and like to play retake with all their set plays. They move all as one unit and are very good at adapting to their opponent's playstyles, and they do their homework very clearly. And after the loss to Onslayers, they came back with a vengeance and countered absolutely everything that they did. And this is the advantage of a double elimination bracket. If they lose to a team once, there's a good chance that they won't lose twice to the same team. They've also seemed to grown a lot since the loss of Champions and have developed a more supportive roles for Stacks, Zest, and Mako to enable RB and Buzz, who both have incredible fragging potential. I'd love to see RB on the Jet and Buzz on the Chamber, which they have run a couple of times, and I think their sheer firing potential is enough to take down a ton of teams. For this run, I do have very high hopes for DRX, and I think that they're going to do very well. Next up is the Japanese team Zeta Division. And to put it bluntly, outside of their region, they have done pretty much absolutely nothing on the international stage, and they've put out disappointing result after disappointing result consistently. Within their region, Zeta is very strong, consistently being one of the best teams in the region, and haven't lost a game since Masters 3 in Berlin. However, the big question mark surrounding the team is if they can hold up to international competition. This team is led by the duelist Depp with a 246 ACS, but the rest of the team is rather lackluster, besides the controller/sentinel Laz. The rest of the team consists of the Initiator Crow and the controller Sugar Zero and the other duelist/flex 10. The team plays a little unorthodox with a generally aggressive playstyle, but often they rely on clutches and strong individual plays from Laz and Depp, who are by far their best players. I do not think that this is going to hold up to international competition. However, they do look better than they did before, so I guess there's always a chance. I do love a good Cinderella story, but I do have to say, I really don't think this one's going to happen. Until Zeta proves me wrong, I think overall they are the worst team in the event by far, and they're going to get slammed in all of their matches. Lucky for them, they have an easier group, and so they do have a chance of beating NIP, but even that's going to be a stretch. They definitely have a possibility, but I really don't think so. Moving on to the next team, which is OpTic Gaming, the second seed from North America. These guys are no stranger to international competition, placing second in Masters 3 and attending champions under the banner of Envy. They did fall short of champions to the X10 Crit roster, who is now Xerxia, which is their first match. This rematch will definitely be a banger, and there is no doubt that OpTic will not underestimate their competition the second time around. OpTic have looked really strong in North America, beating top teams like Sentinels, XSET, and Cloud9, and even the Guard once. They had a bit of a shaky group stage though, losing to Rise in version 1. However, they did shape it up in playoffs and had an outstanding performance. Led by the incredible Jet/Chamber, with a 249 ACS, OpTic are looking to take Reykjavik by storm. The rest of their team consists of the Initiator/Controller FNS, the Sova Crashies, and the other duelist Victor and the Controller Marv. Most people are predicting OpTic to make a deep run in this tournament, and I've got to agree with them. I think OpTic are incredibly strong at the moment, and I think they'll be more prepared than ever for their rematch against Xerxia. OpTic has taken over NA, and they have the LAN experience to take down the top competition in this event. OpTic like to play relatively aggressive and use their utility not only to get onto site, but they save a decent amount of it to use for the post plant. If you let them get set up, there's a good chance that they're going to win that round. They try and get quick plants down, and so they have lots of utility that they can use later. On the defense, they like to play together and rotate quickly so they can fight the attackers with the full force of their team. I think, though, that they may run into some problems against the default heavy teams on the international stage because of this, but overall they're still a very strong team that is almost guaranteed to make it out of groups and place really well. They even have a decent shot at making it all the way and a possibility of winning the whole event, as a lot of people are predicting. But will this happen? That remains to be seen. The next team to talk about in this event is the opponent of OpTic, Xerxia. In the last matchup between these two, Xerxia, back then were X10 Crit, shocked the world and pulled off an incredible Cinderella story upset to beat OpTic, back then Envy. Back then, though, they had their star player Potifan from Overwatch, and now he's gone back to Overwatch. The big question is, how good can Xerxia be without Potifan and with Surf in his place? Surf is certainly a good player in his own right with an ACS of 233, but is he up to Potifan's level? I don't think so. It's incredibly hard to replace a player that good like Potifan. He's an absolute star and incredible at the game. He's always been amazing at Overwatch, placing really well in the World Cup from Thailand, and in Valorant as well. His loss is a giant hole in the team that is very difficult to fill. The real star of this Xerxia team is not their duelist of Surf, however. Instead, it's Scary with an ACS of 220. Don't let that low number fool you, though, as in the SEA Challengers playoffs, he had the third highest ACS in the entire tournament as a controller, mostly playing Astra. His ACS in the tournament was 244, which is incredible for somebody who's not playing a duelist. The rest of the team is rounded out by the Initiators of Foxies and Cruz and the Sentinel Sushi Boys. The team's been playing together for a very long time, and they've grown really close and learned to move together and work as a unit. They play more of a passive playstyle than they used to with Potifan, as Surf isn't able to have the same fragging impact, but the rest of the team more than covers it, as they all work together to dismantle their opponents. They have a slower style now than they did, but they still play very aggressive, similar to some of the North American teams, but they still feel out where the enemy is and play as a unit to attack a site. On defense, they don't generally over-rotate, and they rely on each other to use their utility and hold down sites to stop the aggression. They've grown a lot more passive, but like I said, they still have a lot of aggression, especially on defense, which I understand doesn't make much sense. However, they do play more passive than they used to, but are still very aggressive. They use a lot of flanks on defense and push other aggressive teams of the region back, such as Paper Rex, with some aggression, and they can switch things up relatively quickly and are good at adapting to their opponents. Sometimes they can play with their more aggressive playstyle, but other times they'll play with a more of a defaulty style, and they're good at feeling out their opponents, which is why a double elimination bracket is going to be good for this team of Xerxia. However, with the lack of firepower, it still may not be good enough, no matter how good their strats are. This is what I believe to be true. And I love Xerxia and I loved X10. A year ago, I made a video about how good X10 was and how they even might be better than Liquid. I'd love to see them make it out of groups along with my favorite team of Crew, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but I just don't think it's a possibility. OpTic looks far too strong right now for that to happen and be a realistic possibility, no matter how much I'd love to see that happen. I think this is a great team, but are they good enough to make it out of the group? I don't think so, but that still remains to be seen. The next team I'm going to talk about is my personal favorite of Crew. I've loved Crew since the Regional Masters 1 of 2021 where they beat Astrals. I've always said that they were good, and I did overestimate them going into Reykjavik last year, but eventually they showed up for me in Champions, where they made an incredible Cinderella run to the semifinals and were just in overtime loss to Gambit, almost making it to the finals, but they didn't quite make it there. They still looked really dominant in their region. Even though they had 2 losses to Laser and Leviathan, they ended up beating Leviathan in the grand finals. When they lost to Leviathan, they did not have their star of Kesnet, their star duelist with an absolutely ridiculous 276 ACS over his entire career, which is one of the highest overall ACS of any player in the world. And when they lost to Laser, they were in an enclosed room that was basically like a box and couldn't make any callouts. They also beat them the second time around that they played. Crew is still a ridiculously strong team overall and look dangerous to make another deep Cinderella run in the tournament, as everybody seems to still be underestimating them. Crew has an incredibly deep map pool and also an agent pool. They also run an extremely unorthodox comp on Haven using a Phoenix. The team is rounded out by the Jet/Chamber Nagzet, the Initiator Mizzino, the Sentinel Klaus, and the Controller Delzik. Once Crew gain confidence, they can absolutely pop off and destroy teams. They also totally have the ability to make a lower bracket run as well. Every player on Crew is a fragger and has insane clutch potential to pop off and do well. They've also stated that they're open to switching things up, and I think that could be necessary in Masters when facing these tougher opponents like OpTic and even Liquid, even though they don't look as good right now. I think Crew is going to be hungry for a rematch against Liquid after losing twice, and they've grown a lot since then. I think this rematch is going to be an insane game that Crew is going to prepare very well for and do well. They play aggressively, but they also use their utility effectively to set up pushes and play these off angles that really do hurt their enemies. They play for contact and play aggressively a lot of ways that a lot of teams don't do. They get those opening picks, and most of the time, they'll end up winning the round. And they even go for opening picks on both sides, on defense and on offense. I think this is going to be difficult for a lot of teams to deal with, especially Liquid, with all the problems they've been having, and especially with the mid-round calling that has not been great for Liquid. Speaking of that, Liquid's the next team I'm going to talk about today. Coming in as the 3rd seed from EMEA, they shouldn't even be in the tournament. The only reason they are, in the first place, is because FPX can't attend the tournament due to travel restrictions. Even though Scream is still the edge shot machine and doing well, the rest of the team has kind of fallen into shambles. Liquid was always really good at mid-round calling for the team with lots of heads-up plays, but recently, that just hasn't been happening. They had a rather disappointing run in the group stage, barely scraping into playoffs with a 3-2 record, losing to both Mech, formerly Gambit, and FPX. Then they lost to FPX and G2 in relatively dominant fashion and have not looked like the same Liquid that the community knows and loves. Scream, however, has still been dominant and leads the team with a 269 ACS and a ridiculous headshot percentage of 33.5%. However, the rest of the team's been rather lackluster. The rest of the team is Yampy, often on the Jet or Chamber, the Controller Link, Soulcast, who's recently been playing a good bit of Raze and Neon, and finally Nevera, playing mainly Chamber. The problem with Liquid is that they're incredibly flexible with their roles and play a wide variety of agents and roles, which you may think is a good thing, and it has in the past, but the problem that they're reaching now is they aren't playing their agents as effectively, in my opinion. And I really don't expect much out of them. I don't even expect them to win a single game in their group, but you never know. Anything can happen. There's always a chance, and Liquid is still a very strong team, and they could turn on the heat at any moment. Soulcast as well may very well be fighting for his life at the moment. Because you have to think with the lackluster results that they've been getting, a roster change may be needed, and Soulcast would be the most likely person to go. Liquid also play using a slower style, using a lot of utility, and defaulting more like a lot of the other European teams using a lot of util. I think this is going to be relatively easy for Crew to counter, and they'll decimate the slower style of Liquid, especially with how disjointed the team has become. However, anything could happen, and I'm excited to see what Liquid maybe has planned, but I'm more excited to see what Crew can do to them. The first of the teams that gets an automatic bye to the playoffs is the Brazilian Superstars of Loud. You may not have heard of this team, but I guarantee you've heard of the players. The team is led by Saucy, the bald man himself from Viking, the clutch Sova with an ACS of 245 that's back to make another mark on the international scene. This team has not lost a game since their inception in February and only dropped 2 maps total. That's absolutely ridiculous. The rest of the team is the duelist Aspas from Slick, the initiator Sadak from Vikings, and the controller Pansada from Stars Horizon, and the Sentinel Les from Galaxy Carrots. They play an incredibly aggressive style like the rest of Brazil, but they use their utility a lot more effectively than the rest of the Brazilian scene does. They're in an absolutely different league compared to the rest of the Brazilian competition. They play so aggressively that all their opponents fall very quickly. However, it's true that they haven't played the best competition inside of Brazil, but now is their true test. Now that they face good competition on the international stage, this is going to be the real test to see whether Loud is actually a good team outside of Brazil or if they're just one of the better Brazilian teams. I'm really excited to see what they do, though. Loud like to push up a lot, even on defense, and like I said with NIP earlier, they just overwhelm teams with their sheer aggression, and their skill is just incredible. What separates them from the other Brazilian teams is their teamwork. They have so much aggression, however, it's all together and coordinated, and it's beautiful to watch. The in-game calling by the IGL is just fantastic, and it's hard to place this team and see how good they're going to be together against international competition. Again, they've only faced Brazilian opponents. They aren't as favored as some of the other teams from the other regions, such as the Guard, OpTic, or G2. However, they at least can put up a good fight and definitely even have a good shot at winning the whole tournament, especially with the bye to the playoffs. If you're looking for an underdog to root for that has a chance, I definitely looked to Louder Crew. Another underrated team that is Paper Rex. They're in fantastic shape as of right now. And do I think they're as good as Loud? No, probably not. However, they do look really hot right now, and Forsaken is just incredible. He had the highest ACS in the SEA Challengers playoffs by far and has a career ACS of 274 for the Jet main. Paper Rex has absolutely decimated the majority of their opponents and have shown no signs of slowing down, now or anytime soon. The rest of the team consists of the controller Mindfreak, the initiator Benkai, the duelist/flex Jing, and the Sentinel Divide. They are poised to make a mark on this event and also have an opportunity to make a deep run in the tournament. They play really aggressive as well, like a lot of the other teams in this event, pushing sites really early in the round, but this isn't how they always play. They can differ and change up their style to counter their opponents and use utility well to help them execute onto and hold a lot of sites. They play really similar to the Xerxia team, and they like to play together and retake a lot of the time playing in the retake. They play as a unit and play very together, as I said. They've done incredibly well in SEA, but the real question is how can they hold their own against international competition? Southeast Asia showed us that they are much stronger than they had seen back in Champions when X10 Crit and Team Secret both made the quarterfinals, which they had more quarterfinalists than North America had. They for sure have a deep chance at a deep run, but how likely is it? Probably not very. But if Forsaken shows up, they have a good chance of at least winning some games, as he's probably the best player in SEA as of right now. Paper Rex is a very aggressive team, and they rely a lot on the individual plays of Forsaken and plant very quickly. They push down really fast on offense and defense, liking to set up flanks. I think, again, this might be difficult for some of the slower teams to deal with at first, but once they adjust to it, I think they might be easier to deal with. I think they're a less adaptable team than Xerxia, but the difference is the skill of Forsaken, and without Patafon, Forsaken just jet diffs them any day of the week. But he is really incredible and sets the team apart with his carry. I'm excited to see them play and maybe even win some games. I really don't see them winning the whole tournament, but anything is possible. The next team I want to talk about is G2. Again, this team has a lot of question marks after a bit of a shaky group stage, losing to Fnatic and Ascend, and then Liquid in playoffs. Now, they did come back and beat Fnatic and Liquid later in the lower bracket, but it still begs the question of how good are they really? The star player on G2 is the Sova/duelist Nukia with a 257 ACX, and he looks fantastic, as well as the Chamber of Mixwell, who looks really good too. The rest of the team is the Sentinel/Initiators, Hoodie and Meadow, and the controller Avova. The team is also pretty fluid with their roles, and they swap around to different roles that they can play. G2 is a team that generally won't lose twice to their opponents, and have come back in a lot of the lower bracket runs as they did in the Challengers playoffs to make it to this Masters event. And I think that they definitely have a really good chance of even winning the whole tournament, especially with getting an auto buy into the playoffs and it being a double elimination tournament. They have some question marks overall, but I still think that they're a very strong team and for sure one of the favorites to win this event. Their playstyle is similar to the rest of VMEA, where they like to default a lot and use their utility well on attack and hold sights on defense. However, where they differ from the rest of VMEA, in a large part, it's because they play very scrappy. They like to take a lot of fights and use their individual skills to win those fights. With players such as Mixwell and Nukia, they can definitely do that. I think G2 is for sure one of the strongest teams at this event, and they definitely have the ability to go on a run. I'm not sure if they'll be able to counter the aggression of some of the teams such as the Guard and OpTic, but one thing's for sure. It's a very good team, and I'm excited to see how they perform at this Masters event. The final team I'm going to talk about today is the rookie team, the Guard, who's been making a splash in North America. This team has looked absolutely incredible recently and has taken the region by storm. They've held up impressive results against top teams in the region with a 13-0 against 100 Thieves and a 13-1 against Sentinels. They're an incredibly young team that has a ton of raw talent. The roster is led by 17-year-old star initiator Trent with a 226 ACS as a support player, which is just insane. The rest of the roster is the Sentinel Net, the Controller, and IGL Valen, the Duelist Saya player, and the Flex Jonah P. The crazy part is that Trent has no competitive experience. The first major game he played before Valorant was Rust, which had no competitive scene. The Guard picked him up from the ladder, and he was the best pick that they could have made. This team really is something else. They are giant slayers for sure, and they're poised to slay even more at Masters Reykjavik. They play a very aggressive style similar to the rest of North America, but they play in a very coordinated aggressive style. And I believe it's going to be very difficult for scrappy teams like G2 to deal with them because they're so good at winning their duels, and their aggression is just so coordinated. Not one member on the team stands out so much. Trent obviously does. He's obviously incredibly good. But any one of these team members can pull out clutches and do just incredible things to make incredible plays. Any player on the team has great clutching ability, and the only person on this team with LAN experience is Saya player. He was an Overwatch pro before he went to Valorant. And they may run into problems with this, with the young ages of their team members and the little experience that they have. LAN environments are a whole different world to online tournaments, and it may be difficult for the Guard to perform under all this pressure, when everybody expects them to do so well and has all these expectations on their shoulders. However, I do think that they have the skill and the leadership to do it. Valen is an excellent IGL for their team and can definitely make this work. I think the double elimination playoff bracket will also make things easier for them, as they can learn from their mistakes if they lose and come back stronger with more experience that they were lacking before. They've shown they can do this after their loss against Cloud9 when they came back and beat them in the playoffs of the Challengers playoffs. I think the bye to the playoffs in Masters will also help them a good bit, as they're going to get an extra week to study the teams that they're going to be playing and have more prep time for that. I do have very high hopes for this team, and I believe that they're going to do very well and even have a shot at winning this whole event and taking home a trophy for North America. Alright, the last thing I'm going to talk about today is my power rankings. So I'm going to try and go over this quickly because I know that this has been a long video. So these are the teams that I think will rank the best, not necessarily how they're going to place in the event. Starting at the bottom, I think Zeta is the worst team in this event. I don't think I really have to go over much of this. I mean, again, I described all these teams in the past earlier in this video, and Zeta is just, they haven't performed well at any international event, and there's no reason for me to believe that they will. In 11th, I have NIP. Again, there's a lot of question marks surrounding this team, and even though they beat Leviathan in the LATAM Brazil final, they got destroyed by Loud, and the Brazilian scene really isn't that good. I think Loud is very good, and I think that they have a chance, but Brazil didn't really do anything last year, and there's no reason for me to think NIP is going to do any better this year. At 10th, which may come as a surprise, I'm going to put Liquid there. And Liquid just really hasn't looked good recently. They've looked very bad, very disjointed, and so I have to put them down there. I don't think they're going to even win a game. That's just what I think. I think that's going to be very difficult for them, but I'll get to my predictions in a minute. At 9th, we got Xerxia. I have high hopes for this team. I really like Xerxia. However, I have to put them low on the list. I can't put them any higher just because I don't think that they're going to do that well without Potifan, but anything can happen. In 8th, we have Paper Rex, and I do think that they're a very strong team, but I don't know that SEA has the firepower to necessarily break into the top teams, and I'm not sure that Paper Rex can exactly hold a candle to them. Just with their sheer aggression, I don't know that that's going to necessarily be enough. In 7th place, I have DRX. I think this team is incredibly good. I think that DRX is poised to make a deep run, and I have them so low because it's just so hard to make a list. All these teams are really good, and I think anything can really happen. I definitely think DRX is going to make it out of groups, but how high they can fly, I don't know. That really does remain to be seen. Some questionable results in the past are making me question them, but they are definitely looking really good right now. In 6, I have Crew. I'd love to put Crew at number 1, but I really just, basing it off of facts, Crew did lose 2 games regardless of the circumstances. I think they're a very good team. I think they definitely have another possibility of another Cinderella run, but I just can't put them any higher than 6. At number 5, we got the Brazilian superstars of Loud. So I think that Loud is very good. I think they have a chance at making a deep run in this event. But again, we haven't seen them in competition internationally outside of Brazil. So there's still a lot of question marks against them. Fnatic at number 4. Again, Fnatic without Fearoth and with Brave AF, I put them at number 1 in this event. But since they have a sub, I think it's going to be very difficult for them to perform. I think it would be hard for anybody. But if anybody can do it, I think Fnatic might be the team. They have looked a little shaky, though, recently, so I'm not sure. At number 3, I have OpTic. I think OpTic is a really strong team. I think that losing to X10, though, again, puts a question mark by them. They had some losses to version 1 and Rise, who didn't make it that far in playoffs. So I think, again, there's more question marks on this team, but they do still look very strong and very good. But, again, I can't place them any higher than 3rd. At number 2, I have G2, which is by far EMEA's best hope. But, again, I just don't know. They also had some questionable results with some losses to Liquid, FPX, and to Ascend, I believe. And it's just, it's hard to... Sorry, not Ascend, Mech. But it's hard because EMEA is kind of, like I said, in shambles, and I feel like this is NA's tournament. If we're going to win an event, this is going to be it. This is going to be the event we win. So I'm going to put G2 at 2, and number 1 I'm going to put the Guard. I know there's a lot of... it's hard for me to put the Guard at number 1 because of the lack of experience, but this team just looks so good. They look so good. Watch their VODs. Watch their highlights. They are incredible. And I think that they're poised to make a run, and I think they're going to make North America proud. I really do. I think that I'd love to see them do well, and I do think that is a definite possibility for them. So really quick, going over my predictions for the group stage, I think that here they are up on the screen. I think Fnatic and DRX will make it out of groups, and OpTic and Crew. I'd love to root for Crew and Xerxia, and I will root for them. But I do think OpTic's going to take that. They just look too strong right now to lose to either Xerxia or Crew, or even Liquid if Liquid beat Crew. I think they'll take the top slot almost certainly in that group. Still going to root for Crew and Xerxia, but I don't think it's going to happen. And in the top group, I think that that's pretty much set for me. I think that I'm almost certain that is the right choice of groups of Fnatic and DRX making it out. Predictions, I think anybody can win the whole tournament. I would love to see Crew win the tournament. I'd love to see an underdog, but again, I don't think that's going to happen. If my money's on somebody, my money's on the Guard. But that lack of experience, it's definitely going to hurt them. But with a double elimination bracket, I think anything's possible. But that is the end of the video. Thank you guys for watching all of it. I know it must have been a lot to sit through, but I thank you guys so much. It means so much that you guys are watching it. Share it with your friends, like, comment, subscribe. This has been the longest video I've ever done, the most research I've done on a video. I've probably spent 15-20 hours doing this video alone, and so I had like a 15-page script for this. But I appreciate all of you guys. I haven't been posting. I've had a lot going on in my personal life and things. So if this video does well, I'll probably consider posting more, but if it doesn't, I'll probably post occasionally, every once in a while. But I want to make this in-depth video for everybody because I know not everybody watches all the regions, and so I hope you guys found this informative. I'll definitely be watching Masters, and if this video does well, then I'll make some updates on the rest of Masters and how things are going. But for now, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to, you guys know what to do. Check out the socials in the description, everything like that. Riot, if you want me as an analyst, I mean, DM me on Twitter, something like that. But everybody, I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you all in the next one.